What's up everyone? Today I'm going to show you how you can get your drums sounding like this with some of the most affordable recording equipment. If you want to record some drums at home, maybe film some covers or record over some tracks, and you want to mic up your kit without spending a bomb, this video is for you. I'm using budget mics, a super affordable interface and cheap cables. Nothing fancy here, just solid tuning and some smart recording techniques. I'm Gideon from drumhelper.com, and if this video helps you out, please be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's jump straight in. So here's what you'll need if you want to record drums at home with a multi-mic setup. 1. Your mics. I'm using the AKG Session 1 mic kit, which includes 7 mics as well as the clamps for toms and snare. 2. An audio interface with enough inputs and preamps for all of your mics. I'm using the Behringer 1820, which has 8 XLR inputs. 3. XLR cables. You'll need 1 cable per microphone, all going straight into your interface. Make sure they're long enough to reach easily. Around 15 to 25 feet is usually ideal. 4. A pair of overhead mic stands. You don't need to spend a lot here. I've got some affordable K&M stands and they're pretty solid. And 5. A computer with recording software. That could be Logic, Reaper, Pro Tools, or whatever you're most comfortable with. I personally use Logic. Before we get into mic placement, let's talk about the drums themselves. This is a Mapex Armory, which is a pretty affordable kit. In fact, I think it's one of the best value drum sets out there. I've upgraded the tom heads to Evans UV2s. I'd say getting some decent heads is one of the most worthwhile and affordable upgrades you can make. I wanted to show you that you don't need expensive drums to make a great sounding recording. But what does matter is using good heads and getting your tuning on point. You can't tune cymbals the way you can with drums, so you want to use a decent set. I'm using these B20 cast cymbals from Zoltan. They're pretty affordable and they sound awesome. When tuning drums, you want to get an even tension all the way around the head, and you also want to get a good relationship between the batter and the reso. Alright! I like to tune the reso a little bit higher than the batter head. I'd also recommend getting a porthole cut out in the reso of the kick. It gives you a bit more attack and definition. I like to use this bass drum hole cutter. Really cheap but useful. I'll link it in the description. Remember, the quality of what you put into the microphones will always reflect in what comes out. So it's really worth spending time getting everything right. Tuning, head choice, and dampening if you need it. You can always use a few moon gels to control overtones to get a tighter sound. Alright, let's get straight into the mic setup. This AKG Session mic kit's a full 7 mic setup. We've got 1 P2, which is your kick mic, then 4 P4s, 1 for snare and 3 for toms. And finally, 2 P17s, which are your overhead condensers. Plus, you get all the mic mounts and clips to put them straight onto your drums. Starting with the kick mic, I mount mine using a small mic stand. If you don't have one, don't worry. You can just rest the mic straight inside the kick on top of a towel or a pillow. I like to position mine just by the porthole and angle the capsule slightly upward to where the beater makes contact with the batter head for a little bit more definition. Now onto the snare. I've got the mic positioned about the 11 o'clock spot, between the hi-hat and the rack tom, angled down towards the center of the snare. I like to keep about an inch of distance between the mic capsule and the head. For the toms, I attach these mics using the clamps that mount straight onto the drum hoops. On the high tom, I place the mic about the 11 or 12 o'clock position, angled a little away from the left crash cymbal. The middle tom, I usually go about the 1 o'clock spot, keeping a similar angle and distance, again, roughly 2 centimeters off the head. And for the floor tom, I usually go about the 2 o'clock position. I like to keep the tom mics all pretty close to the drum head for a clear attack, but not so close that they touch the head or get in the way of my playing. And lastly, the overheads. I like to keep them fairly high up. My ceiling isn't the tallest, but I like to give them as much height as I can. And then I position each mic so they're placed over the cymbals, but also a little bit over the shells, just to help give the kit a bit more of a fuller sound. It's really important that both overheads are positioned the same distance away from the center of the snare drum. The easiest way to measure it is with a spare cable. Holding it to the center of the snare and reaching it out to the end of the first mic, and then just making sure the other one matches up. If it's uneven, the snare will sound weird. You'll get this uneven stereo image. So definitely take a moment to get this right. All right, the next step is just plugging everything in. The female end of the XLR goes into the microphone and the male end goes straight into the interface. I like to plug mine in the same order every time. So for me, it's kick on channel 1, snare on channel 2, toms on 3, 4, and 5, and overhead 6 and 7. Doing it this way just keeps things consistent and I know what's where when I label my tracks. Now, before you open your session, there's one super important thing to do. Overhead mics are condenser mics, which means they need 48-volt phantom power to work. So just make sure phantom power switched on the 2 channels that overheads are plugged into. Once that's sorted, you can open up your DAW and start a fresh session. Create audio tracks for as many mics as you're using, in this case 7. I like to label my channels straight away: kick, snare, rack, middle, floor, OH left, OH right, etc. It just keeps everything clear. Then I'll pan my overheads left and right to create that full stereo image. After that, you'll need to record enable the tracks. In Logic, it's this little red R button. Hit that on all of the channels you want active. Once you see them light up, you're good to go. Now let's talk about gain staging, which is basically setting the right input level for each mic. This part is a little bit of trial and error unless your interface has auto gain staging built in. Even then, you might likely have to do a little bit of tweaking. You want to hit each of the drums individually at the same intensity you normally play, and bring up each preamp gain until the signal is healthy but below clipping. If your interface is out of reach like mine, I like to start the game with about 1/3 of the way around the dial, and then it's just a bit of trial and error from there. You don't want to record with too much gain so that you're nearly clipping, because what will happen is you'll end up pulling a lot more bleed from each mic. And on the flip side, if your signal's too quiet, you won't get those nice strong transients. So really, it's about finding that sweet spot in the middle. Now you're ready to record, the biggest factor in how your drums will sound is how you play. You can have the nicest kit, the best mics in the coolest room, but if the performance isn't there, the recording is never going to feel that great. What you put in is exactly what you get out. So yeah, good performance, good tuning, and good mic placement. Those 3 things will do more for your drum sound than any plugin ever will. Now I've got some solid performances down, let me show you some simple ways you can start shaping your drum sound. I'm not a mixing engineer by any means. In fact, I actually don't mix my own drums that often these days. But I want to show you a few simple things you can do with some of the stock plugins on your digital audio workstation to just polish your sound a little bit better. So here I'm screen recording this in OBS so you can see what I'm doing inside Logic. The great thing about Logic is that the stock plugins are excellent. The EQ, compression, reverb, all of it. On the kick drum, I've added some low end weight and boosted the top end to bring out that attack and click. On the snare, I boosted the low mid area, roughly around 200 Hz for extra body, and then boosted about 3K and 10K for extra brightness and projection. On the toms, I just did a few EQ moves to reduce weird frequencies. On the floor tom especially, I dipped out quite a bit of muddy mid-range that you can really hear when you turn off the EQ. For the overheads, I've really not done much. Just took out some of the low end and boosted the top end. So this is literally just a rough mix I've experimented with. But you can already hear how these EQ moves have just helped everything sit a bit better together and just sound more polished. To as you can hear, you really don't need expensive gear or a big studio to get great drum sounds at home. It's all about tuning your kit, placing your mics well, and just nailing your performances. Following the right techniques when it comes to drum recording will take you so much further than any piece of fancy gear will. Just one last thing I haven't mentioned yet is the room itself. Your recording space actually does make a difference to how your drums sound on the mics. So if you're in a really live, echoey room, like a garage or a bare empty space, you might want to tame those reflections a bit. You can throw down some rugs, hang up some curtains, or just stick a few blankets or duvets around the room to just tame those reflections. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys. If this video helped you out, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I've also linked all the gear I'm using in this video in the description, so you can get recording too. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'm Gideon from drumhelper.com, and I'll catch you in the next video.